to the rapidly cascading events of October 20th, 2020. 5 years ago today, the EndSARS protests resonated with righteous passion in Lagos and across Nigeria. It was a remarkable time when young people came together to highlight their harrowing experiences of police brutality and to fight back. Protests were held not just in Nigeria but across the world, including London, Berlin, Toronto, Atlanta and New York. The protests eventually died down, but its vanguard, using social media, found new expression, energizing millions ahead of the 2023 presidential election and inspiring many into believing they could change this country through the power of their vote. But alas, the presidential election ended up mired in accusations of fraud and systemic failure. This is how Arise News broke the news of the protests 5 years ago, as security agents turned their guns on the protesters. Our top story at this hour is our central story that is still developing and unfolding tonight. Sounds of gunfire have exploded on the streets in Nigeria's commercial capital, Lagos, as troops open fire on protesters there. There are reports of people killed and wounded as the Nigerian authorities move to end increasingly violent protests against police abuses. Riot police have been deployed across the country and a curfew has come into force in several states.
What do we want? EndSARS! What do we want? EndSARS! What do we need? EndSARS! What do we need? EndSARS!
After protests, what next is for SARS to be ended. And when we are done with that, we ask for reform of the police. We do not want a police that where they see us and say they were going to waste us. The people who are supposed to be law enforcers turn out to be lawbreakers.
We'll put it on the news.
Now, as we remember that remarkable time when young people came together and decided to fight back, one voice that resonated passionately with the youth then and is still doing so now was that of the political and civil rights activist Aisha Yesufu. You saw her in that video there. Her righteous voice helped to raise consciousness, to connect young EndSARS protesters and to highlight the harrowing narrative they were trying to draw attention to. And Aisha Yesufu joins me now in the studio. Thank you very much indeed for coming in.
Thank you so much for having me.
I wonder what your thoughts are when you look back on that period 5 years ago.
You know, just now while the shooting was going on, I mean, a young man across me just now flinched as soon as those guns started going away. And it's just something that evokes such a very heartbreaking memory, and that Nigeria could do this to its young ones. But just to say something, earlier on when you said that the protest died down, the protest didn't die down, it was killed off. I mean, guns were brought in. As you saw, military officers who ordinarily should be protecting Nigerians and the territorial integrity of Nigeria decided to turn their guns on citizens, Nigerian youth who were merely, you know, reciting the national anthem and also waving the Nigerian flag. So it's such a painful memory. And, you know, like I was saying in that video, that when a policeman or a policewoman or any security agent say that they're going to kill you and get away, nothing will happen, that indeed on the 20th of October 2020, you know, without any doubt, we came to see that, yes, indeed, they can kill Nigerians and nothing would happen. It's really so sad that Nigerian government, like I've always said, decided to behave like a terrorist government by killing its own citizen on October 20th, 2020.
And what inspired you at the outset to join in fully? I mean, was it the excitement of seeing this movement of young people on the streets and the sense perhaps that something new and the change you had fought to see happen was taking form?
So it's quite, so the first thing I would like to say is the fact that the first EndSARS protest was not in 2020. It was actually in 2017. And I was part of that protest. I remember speaking, you know, during that whole protest. So when the 2020 protest started, I came out the first day. And then in Abuja, I think we had that protest on the 8th. The first protest was called out on the 7th. We had gone home when this group of young people who woke up, you know, one of them sent text to his colleagues at around 2 a.m. and then they decided to come out, and police, of course, usually being the Nigerian police, tear gassed them, and they said they were coming out. And so I joined them that, or the mind for me was the fact that these are Nigerian youth who are coming out to protest, and the police had attacked them, and I was there to be with them, to give them that moral support and just say, look, hey, whatever the police was going to do, you needed to go through me to get at them. And even the pictures, those pictures that went viral, I was literally at the back almost all throughout. They were doing their thing, they owned the protest, and they were so organized. And so it was when the police came out that they wanted to shoot them in Abuja. That was when I came to the front and I said, if you're going to shoot them, then you have to put the bullet through me. Because what did they do? In spite of the fact that Nigeria has not given them an enabling environment for them to thrive, they found niches for themselves, and they're thriving, they're doing so well, and you're killing them off just because they have tattoo, you know, they have dreadlocks, or they have laptops or beautiful cars. What is a crime in that? And so for me, it wasn't about being the excitement of the moment. It was just about the Nigerian youth are being attacked by Nigerian police, and I needed to be there and ensure that they were okay.
But of course, there was something about the character of the movement and the fact that it seemed to cut across ethnic and religious lines. The beginnings of a mass movement focusing on better governance that you had canvassed for so long. I mean, Nigeria is a very complicated landscape of diversity. And that makes it difficult to mobilize people across a large swathe of the population to bring together a kind of unified narrative, doesn't it?
Yeah, it does. But the thing is that the EndSARS protest was unique in its own way. It was a protest of survivor, in the words of Florence Ozzo. And the other protests that we usually have are protests of empathy. Something is happening, so someone, there's injustice against someone, you come up. But this time, when it came to the EndSARS protest, it was mostly survivors that were there. You had people who were victims of EndSARS, who were victims of police brutality, or who had loved ones who were victims. Some of them were victims many times over. So it wasn't something about, you know, someone coming on behalf of another person, but they were coming to fight for themselves, to, you know, for their own survival in their own country, because this has been going on for so long. So that's what makes it a bit different from the other protests. Like, for example, you're talking about the Bring Back Our Girls movement, which was more of, you know, a protest of empathy, you know, people coming out on behalf of other people. And the other thing also is the fact that with the EndSARS protest, it was the demography was more educated, entrepreneurial. They have their own money, they could make their own money out of government, and they had social media, they could use social media, they could organize, you know, amongst themselves. But what the EndSARS then did was that it brought in an awakening, an awareness of how government can be and the brutality of government. For those of us who were born during the military era or grew up during the military era, we were used to this. But a good number of the EndSARS protesters were quite young. Some of them were were young when Nigerian democracy came, or they were not born, you know, as of the time that it had come. So they really didn't understand how brutal government can be. So for the first time, they came face to face with what government could do to its own citizens. With the protests that they had seen before, they really hadn't paid attention until it happened to them.
But in the end, I mean, it didn't quite unlock the future, did it? Whatever happened to all that energy? I'm wondering whether 5 years on, conditions in this country have become more difficult, whether it actually changed anything in Nigeria beyond that one concession the government made.
It did. So the thing is that, you know, in terms of nation building, how do I put it now? It's a marathon, it's not a sprint. And sometimes when you're living history is very slow and you really don't see the things that are happening. And so when you're talking about whether be it advocacy, activism, nation building, you have to look at the little wins consistently for you to actually see that there's a difference. And I'll tell you what the difference is. Before EndSARS, there were times where I needed to sometimes take on several issues. I'm fighting this, I'm talking about this, oh, Aisha needs to talk about this before this. Now, I literally might be silent, but issues are being talked about. If you notice, there are more voices that are out there. Yes, situations are bad, know that about it, but there are more voices that are having that pushback, especially from the younger generation. So people have been emboldened. Yes, absolutely. People have been emboldened. They're speaking out more. They're taking on issues. The younger generation are taking on more issues. And of course, politically, there's been more political awareness. Before EndSARS, there was a red card movement that I participated in, and we'll go around telling people that, look, there was red card to APC and PDP, that you can have an alternative candidate that doesn't necessarily have to come from these two parties. Nigerians couldn't say it. But after EndSARS, remember, the politicians there were mocking, the Nigerian youth that if they don't like what happened, they should remove them. And so they put themselves together, and that was what led to that obedient movement that you saw, and what we saw with the 2023 election. In spite of the fact that the election was rigged and the result didn't turn out the way people had voted, but there is an awareness that comes from it, and we must take that, because in the course of building a nation, or in the course of fighting, for a better country, if you don't constantly look at the little wins and put them together, then you get discouraged and think that nothing is happening. Indeed, a lot has been happening, and I will tell you, more people have been emboldened. So I don't think, it's so much of, it fizzled out and nothing came out of it. And I will tell you something, the government, Nigerian government has really been afraid. And what we have, this particular administration, which for me, it's an illegitimate administration, and that's the reason why I didn't even come out for protest. I've said since they came, I'm not going to protest to a government that I don't even believe should be there, because that will be legitimizing illegitimacy. It's surprisingly, 5 years ago, during EndSARS protests, security agents shot at citizens, and they're still doing it. And, they think they can get away with it. In some of the videos I saw earlier today, I saw like helicopters, coming around. I'm like, wow, you could use this to go after innocent, protesters who have a right. By the way, it's everybody's right to protest, whether you're a lawyer or you're not a lawyer, it's your right to protest. And you're going after the big criminals that have been terrorizing citizens, especially in this Abuja. We can't sleep in our houses right now with our eyes closed, but yet you don't see the police doing any of that. Terrorists are doing show of force at peace talks that government are getting themselves in, but then the security agents are doing show of force at citizens who are unarmed and simply, protesting, for which they have a constitutional right. It's just an anomaly. That's what we have in this country.
Just returning to those protests, the EndSARS protests, I mean, was it perhaps that people like yourself, because I mean, as I said, you've been calling for change, you've been calling for protests. Were you taken by surprise by that enormous outpouring of energy? And I'm wondering whether, looking back, what you've learned from that, because with hindsight, some people have said that one of the problems with attempting to ride that particular horse was the lack of leadership and structure.
So for me, first of all, yes, I was surprised by the turnout. And ironically, I had returned back to the country because I was away in Scotland with my daughter when COVID happened. So all throughout, I was with my kids.
Cold Scotland.
Yeah, cold Scotland. Had to ask my son to leave London, come meet me there. And so 3 of us were in Scotland. Yeah. So the first plane from from Aberdeen, from UK back to Abuja, I was on that train, and I came in, I think I can't remember precisely, but in September. So I did my then when you come in, you have to be quarantined for some number of days, weeks, or something like that.
The COVID period.
Yes. So I finished that. On the first, there was actually a protest. And that protest, not a lot of people came out because people had called for, the hardship and everything. Not a lot of people came out. I remember doing a video and just chastising Nigerians and say, look, you will be online, you'll be retweeting, but you never come out, for a protest. Because I had stayed so long in Scotland, a lot of people thought I had jackpot, I had run out of Nigeria and stuff like that. And so on that day I was in. And so surprisingly, a week after, Nigerians came out massively. I was shocked by that. And I'll give you one example. There's a young man called Adam Ismail in Kano. He called for the protest, the first on the 7th of October. It was only his friend that joined him at that protest. Then he called for another protest, I think it was on the 18th or thereabout of October, and thousands of people were on the street. So that was quite surprising. We hadn't seen that, in a very long time. But for people who say there should have been leadership or no. Let me tell you something. There was leadership. It's not the traditional kind of leadership that we're used to. It's not a vertical kind of leadership. It's a horizontal kind of leadership. That's why you find that people were leading, people were organizing, people were crowdfunding, people were trying to manage and ensure that, you know, people were at different places. Remember, government had taken away security for them. They had to organize their own security, their own healthcare. They even had a helpline that you could call. So that was leadership. What they did was that they learned from all the protests that had been going on before, which is the right thing to do. They knew what happened with Occupy Nigeria. Because there were certain people who were leaders, it was easy to negotiate with them, take them out, and everything was gone. So they refused to follow that route and decided that, look, they were going to have this kind of horizontal leadership where different people were in charge of different places, and you really didn't know who to take away. If you're taking away an Aisha, Yesufu, it wasn't going to make an impact. The protest was going to go on. So it was a strategy that led to that whole major thing you saw, where they could not look for certain people who were known as leaders and then be able to sort of like, you know, either take them out or negotiate with them and end the whole protest. So it was a good strategy that worked, and it's still working, with a lot of people now being more emboldened, taking in things and taking in leadership roles and taking responsibility for things that they can do, rather than just having one person where if you just cut off the head, everything is gone.
Yeah, that's a good point. But I mean, I know you talked earlier that, you know, these kind of things are incremental.
Absolutely.
But what about the ultimate objective of pushing the government to become more competent and to become more respectful of human rights and to deliver results? I mean, we heard Omoyele Sowore and Mazi Dixon talking earlier about, and you mentioned it, I mean, the attacks were still the same. I mean, you know, tear gas, even live ammunition. There is that is not there, is it? And that was what you and the protesters at EndSARS were aiming to achieve.
That is not there, of course, because first of all, you have a situation whereby there is capture. In literally the state capture. Institutions have been captured. Different arms of government have also been captured. You look at the judiciary, where judiciary says one thing, gives order, and it's not followed, and the same judiciary will come and give a counter order, a counter ruling, and it's still not followed. So that has emboldened a lot of people who are not, you know, doing the right thing. So in terms of having this protest, there's also the political protest that has to come in. Citizens must understand that protest is not only when you're on the streets and, you know, marching. It's also when you go to the polls, you need to look for people that you know are going to respect the rule of law. Your vote, yes, and all the rest of it. Protect it, absolutely. Because I've said, if you go to the polls and you vote, you don't wait, you don't protect your vote and ensure that it's counted for your candidate and entered in officially for your candidate, then you didn't vote. What you simply did is paper painting. You put your hand on the ink and then you painted on some paper and you went away. So if we understand, you know, the importance of that election and political activism that we need to do, then citizens will ensure that not only do they vote for candidates with competence, character, capacity, that are patriotic, that will obey the rule of law and ensure that there's separation of powers, then we must also ensure that we get in the right people in there. So these are people that we vote in, then they will respect the rule. Otherwise, what we'll continue to have are criminals who get themselves into office and they don't mind destroying the whole country just for them to continue to stay in. And ironically, the current set of people who happen to be in government were the same set of people who had gone through these things that they're doing. There's nothing that is being done today that was not done previously. It's in the handbook. And so the only things that they're doing they've worsened in the way that they have done all of these things that are wrong. And I think it bears down to Nigerians understanding, first of all, that they have a right and they need to be treated with respect, and ensuring whoever is there, you know, treats them with respect.
Aisha, I want to thank you very much indeed. Your words are always welcome.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thank you for coming in. Aisha Yesufu is one of the righteous voices, I have to say, in this country. And she helped connect young EndSARS protesters and to highlight their harrowing narrative. She is, of course, a political and civil rights activist. Thank you very much indeed.
Thank you.
That's it for this edition of Arise Prime Time. Join us again tomorrow. From me and the entire team here in Abuja, bye-bye, and thank you for watching.